Some days the news doesn't feel like a bombshell at first, but then it starts hitting different when you really think about what is being built around Drake Maye. A rookie gets a text from the quarterback. A small roster battle might decide real depth. The defense is still hunting for more pressure, and there's a dangerous fallback option sitting in the receiver market. All of it touches the same wound and the same hope. The Patriots are trying to protect the future before the past comes back to collect. So hit that like button because today we're talking trust, risk, and guts in Foxborough. Caleb Lomu arrived in New England, and before he even got through a truly hard practice in that Patriots jersey, he already received something you can't measure on a spreadsheet: belonging. His phone was buzzing after the draft, of course. Family, friends, everybody's celebrating the moment. But when Drake Maye is one of those messages, the whole temperature changes. Because that is not just a quarterback being nice to a rookie. That is the guy carrying the future of the franchise, looking at a newly drafted tackle and basically saying, "Come with me because we're going to need each other." And I love that because the Patriots spent far too long looking like a team asking its quarterback to simply survive. Now the conversation is finally starting to shift. Lomu said it was awesome to get that message from Maye. He praised his energy, his talent, and then he gave fans the kind of line they hold on to. He's excited to protect that guy for many years. That doesn't win a rep. It doesn't guarantee a clean pocket. It doesn't fix everything on its own. But it shows mindset. It shows a young player who understands he wasn't drafted just to wear a hat on stage. He was drafted to become part of the protection plan. And that's where the good kind of aggression shows up. New England didn't just sit back and wait for the perfect board to fall. They moved up to pick 28, sent their first rounder and a fourth to Buffalo, because they didn't believe Lomu would still be there at their original spot. To me, that's conviction. You can debate the price. You can debate the timing. You can say tackles need time. That's all fair. But if the internal evaluation said this was the future at right tackle, then I'd rather see the Patriots attack the need before it turns into panic. Morgan Moses is still in the building, and that helps a lot. The veteran can hold down the present while Lomu learns the speed of the league, the weight of the little details, and the consistency that separates a talented prospect from a reliable starter. On the other side, Will Campbell is part of that young trench rebuild too. Lomu said Campbell and other teammates had already sent him messages, and the first Zoom meetings have been positive. That may sound small, but for an offensive line, it matters. Chemistry does not magically appear in September. It starts with those first contacts, those early signals, and that feeling that nobody is walking in alone. The image that sticks with me is powerful. Drake Maye, Campbell, and Lomu all tied to a real attempt to give this offense a backbone for years. It's not flashy. It's not the easiest headline. It's protection, patience, and identity. And if Lomu develops the way the Patriots believe he can, this trade could be remembered as the moment Foxborough stopped patching the future and started surrounding its quarterback with people built to stay. The next story doesn't come with first-round noise or some massive breaking news headline, but this is exactly the kind of detail serious coaches study with a microscope. The Patriots are expected to carry only 3 running backs on the 53-man roster. And when you put Travion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson as the two names basically locked into the top spots, one simple, tough, very competitive question remains. Who deserves the last chair in that room? And the name currently out front, according to Chad Graff, is Jam Miller. 7th round, Alabama. Real production, but absolutely no free pass. That's what I like about this battle. Nobody is handing the kid anything just because he came from a powerhouse program or because the draft just happened. He ran for 504 yards last season, had 668 the year before, finished his college career with 1,596 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns, and showed some receiving value over the last 2 years. There's material there, there's versatility, there's a competitive background. But Foxborough cannot fall in love with a label. 7th round pick means promise with a very narrow doorway. Miller has to block, protect the football, understand the calls, show value when the play breaks down, and most of all, prove he can live in a role that rarely gets applause. Because a third running back doesn't survive on highlights. He survives on specialization, trust, and readiness. Sometimes he enters cold. Sometimes he has to pick up a blitz. Sometimes he gets one snap to prove he belongs. Terrell Jennings is not going to just stand there and watch. He was solid last season and already has familiarity with this coaching staff. Lan Larison is also an interesting piece, especially after losing his chance last year because of a broken foot in the preseason. So this battle is not about the prettiest name. It's about who walks into OTAs and camp with fewer excuses and more answers. My read is that Miller may be ahead right now, but his lead still feels fragile. And I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that as the right culture. Henderson brings explosion. Stevenson brings power and experience. And the third guy has to complement them without demanding the spotlight. If Miller is that guy, great. If Jennings or Larison takes the job by force, that's even better for the roster. What the Patriots cannot do is treat depth like some tiny detail, because in a long season, a bottom of the roster spot can become a decisive snap before fans even see it coming. Now the conversation moves away from a roster spot and into an area where I have a lot less patience. Getting after the quarterback. Because if there's one thing that can change the entire face of a defense, it's the ability to reach the passer without having to send the whole house every time. And yes, the Patriots made important moves. They brought in Draymond Jones, moved up in the draft to take Gabe Jacas in the second round, still have Harold Landry as a central piece, and have names like Elijah Ponder, Jesse Luketa, Braden Swinson, and Quintavious Hutchins fighting for room. But I cannot look at that unit and say, done, door closed. Not after losing K'Lavon Chaisson and his 10.5 total sacks in free agency. Not after releasing Anthony Jennings, who took on a bigger role late in the season and in the playoffs when Landry was out, putting up 2 postseason sacks and a 15.1% pressure rate. That matters. Maybe it doesn't own the loudest fan debate because everyone looks at wide receiver, offensive line, and Drake Maye first. But inside a season that demands depth, that lost pressure has to be replaced somehow. That's why Jadeveon Clowney gets your attention when he comes up as a possible option for New England. Not as a savior, not as a star walking in to change the franchise by himself, but as a veteran who can join a rotation and make opposing offenses uncomfortable. Clowney was the #1 overall pick in 2014, has had a long career, played for 7 teams, and has 450 tackles and 66.5 sacks. He made 3 Pro Bowls and was a second-team All-Pro in 2016. He never became that 15-sack-a-year monster a lot of people pictured, but that does not erase the fact that he still knows how to disrupt an offensive line. And last season keeps this conversation alive. He had 8.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 fumble recoveries, and 40 pressures in just 13 games with the Cowboys. According to PFF, he ranked 10th among edge defenders in pass rush win rate at 16.7%. For a veteran player, that is not some empty stat. That shows he still has functional burst, technique, contact power, and the ability to win a matchup. And there's another detail that fits exactly with the identity Vrabel wants. Clowney has never had a below-average PFF run defense grade. For a defense that finished 6th in rushing yards allowed per game, keeping that strength is not a luxury. It's the foundation. The real question is price, role, and the coach's conviction. Clowney signed with Carolina in 2024 for 2 years and up to $24 million after a 9.5-sack season in Baltimore. Now, older, maybe the market pushes him towards something short, incentive-based, maybe around $8 million with a path to $10 million. If that is the range and Vrabel believes he helps the room, I'm taking that call without making it dramatic. Because the Patriots are not in survival mode anymore. They're trying to defend a conference title and turn Drake Maye into an era, not just a nice story. And when you're at that point, depth is not a luxury. Rotation is not excess. Extra pressure is not vanity. It is insurance against a bad Sunday, a nagging injury, and one decisive drive. Foxborough Red, would you bring in Clowney for this rotation if the deal was short, or would you let J-Cass and the young guys breathe without another veteran in front of them? Me, honestly, I'd rather force everybody to compete than find out too late that one piece was missing to close the pocket. And now comes the topic that splits the fan base because it mixes desire, recent memory, and the fear of betting on speed too late. The A.J. Brown conversation is still alive, especially with the possibility that talks could get louder after June 1, when Philadelphia would have more cap flexibility to move his contract. But the Patriots cannot build their whole summer around waiting for another team to do exactly what New England wants. If Brown doesn't move, or if the Eagles send him somewhere else, Foxborough needs another card on the table. That's where Tyreek Hill shows up as a dangerous idea. And dangerous in both ways. Dangerous for defenses if that burst is still there and still changing safety angles. Dangerous for the Patriots themselves if the emotional cost is bigger than the on-field answer. Alian Mohammed from Nesson raised this path as an alternative if Brown doesn't come, connecting the obvious point. Drake Maye has a pretty deep ball, aggressive, natural. Pairing that arm with a receiver who built his career destroying coverage downfield is a temptation every fan understands in 5 seconds. I get the fascination, I really do. At his peak, Hill wasn't just fast, he bent defenses. Coordinators changed calls because of him. Corners lined up afraid to blink. Safeties took 2 steps back before the snap even looked dangerous. That kind of player creates space even when he doesn't get the ball. And for Maye, who needs targets capable of turning aggressiveness into real punishment, the idea has real bite. It's not hard to imagine play action, Hill attacking deep space, and the defense having to choose between protecting the top or opening the middle for other targets. But this is where the heart has to talk to the brain. Hill is 32, coming off a major knee injury, and for a player whose calling card has always been speed, that changes the entire evaluation. SpotTrack projects his market value around $15.1 million per year on a 2-year deal. Years ago, that number might have looked like a gift. Now, with age, injury, and physical uncertainty, it becomes a serious question. The Patriots have almost $36 million in cap space, according to Over the Cap, so pure money would not be the main obstacle. The question is whether that money buys explosion or buys a memory. And there's another side. Stephon Diggs is still unsigned. Juwan Jennings, Deebo Samuel, and even a possibility involving George Pickens are names floating around in the pivot conversation. That means New England does not have to act like it's running out of oxygen. The team can wait for the board to show who is actually available, what it costs, and what profile best fits the offense. Brown feels like the stronger preference because of physical fit, age, and complete impact. Hill would be more of an acceleration shot, a bet on immediate ceiling, maybe on a prove-it deal if he lowers the ask. The fan side of me looks at Drake Maye and says, give that kid a missile. The side of me that wants to see the Patriots build something sustainable answers, sure, but don't hand over the vault for a name if the body no longer matches the legend. If Hill takes a short deal, with protection for the team and motivation to prove he can still scare the league, I'm listening. If he wants to be paid like the Tyreek from years ago, then Foxborough says thank you and keeps looking. The Patriots need a vertical threat, yes. But they need the right move even more because at this stage of the project, every weapon placed next to Maye has to pull the franchise closer to the future, not closer to a beautiful memory. At the end of the day, everything comes back to the same question. What kind of team do the Patriots want to be around Drake Maye? A team that only reacts when the season gets tight? Or a franchise that sees problems early, creates competition, and chooses weapons with purpose? Lomu represents protection and future. The running back battle represents roster detail. Clowney represents a chance to add pressure without wrecking the plan. Hill represents temptation, speed, and risk. And I want New England aggressive, yes, but aggressive with a brain. If you believe this project is starting to take shape, subscribe to the channel because Foxborough is getting interesting again.